When I was 17, 18, I traveled around Canada, went to 3 provinces to volunteer as part of this government program for youth. It was called Katimavik. Before going to Katimavik, I went on a New York trip, and in the first part, I arrived at the first place. It was a place called Mattawa, Ontario, a small town. I fell in love with no-bake cheesecake when I was working at a women's shelter in Mattawa, Ontario. It's kind of aptitude test, and based on the interviews, the first placement I got was at this women's resource center, women's shelter, and I always wanted to make the best dishes because I would be cooking, okay, and doing groceries and playing Yahtzee and sometimes I would be in charge of doing groceries with this other woman. We became close friends. She even traveled all the way to PEI to see me at my other placement. She was so nice. We would play Yahtzee every afternoon. And it was such a great place. You go in and every day you get used to the same faces of the women. And you get close to them. Sometimes I had various jobs. Sometimes I would be responsible for the donation center. I would sort clothes and things like that, toys. Sometimes I would be responsible for the daycare. My least favorite. Running after kids is just not my forte. Sometimes I wrote an article for the newspaper, the local newspaper, about the women's shelter and things like that. Sometimes I would sit and just watch Days of Our Lives with this one woman. Actually, that's not all I did. I also sorted the clothing for the donations. I sometimes looked after the daycare. I wrote an article for the newspaper talking about my work there. I volunteer worked. Help her make a menu. And I was a foodie even back then, so I made really good meals for them. Like, the satisfaction on the faces of the women residing at the shelter. Now, the shelter was for women who were like escaping an abusive relationship. It was a very safe place for them. Even the door at the place had no... I'm sorry, I'm getting so emotional because when I remember them, how sweet they were, and they didn't deserve any of what they were going through in life. So just to be able to put like a little smile on their face by making them like gourmet food, like literally gourmet. I would take out this cookbook. Even the counselor, because they had counselors working there, and then they had me a volunteer. They were like, the girl was like, my gosh, they're lucky having you cooking for them. I don't eat pork anymore, but I remember making this pork roast with like, oh my gosh, the sauce was like an apple, homemade apple. I don't know, it baked for hours, and the whole smell and the whole when you're cooking something with love, it just smelled up the whole shelter and just like made the ambiance just so comforting. We go to do groceries. I made like a glazed pork roast one time with cherry cheesecake for dessert. It was so good. I still remember it. And the women loved it. And there was a recipe for a no-bake cheesecake. And I made it, and oh my gosh, I was blown away. It had graham cracker crust though, but